person Joy. Today we'll be talking about the viscera of the heart. So without much further ado, let's just get into the video. This is the viscera of the heart with pericardium covering the viscera and with the root of the great vessels. Basically, the layer that you can actually see is the pericardium. This is the fibrous pericardium and this is the serous pericardium. So fibrous pericardium is the outermost layer of the heart, and the serous pericardium is divided into two classifications. One is innermost layer of the serous membrane and the one is outermost layer of the serous membrane. So the outermost layer of the serous membrane, which is also called as the parietal layer of the pericardium, is fused with the fibrous pericardium. And the innermost pericardium, which is also called as visceral pericardium, that visceral pericardium is actually fused with the sternocostal surface of the heart, because of which the heart gives a glossy kind of look. Okay, now let us actually understand the anatomical points of the heart. This is the apex, directed downward forward to the left in the fifth intercostal space, just medial to the mid-clavicular line. So this is this conical structure is the apex, and the base that is actually directed to the right and backward. So this is the base of the heart. Okay, and now there are four borders: upper border, inferior border, right border, and the left border. The upper border cannot be actually visible on the outer look. So upper border is totally obscured and is totally blurred when it comes to actually observing it from the bird's eye view. So this is the inferior border that actually extends from the lower orifice of the inferior vena cava to the apex. So the inferior border is actually extended from the orifice of the inferior vena cava to the apex of the heart. And this line that you can actually see is the continuation of the inferior border. So what have I mentioned here? Up to now, we actually discussed only one border, that is inferior border, and there is another border called upper border that is not visible on the outer look. Okay, and there is another border called right border. Basically, right border is related to the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava orifice. So I have already penetrated my index finger through a canal, and this canal is called right border. See, this is actually right border that actually starts from the superior vena cava orifice to the inferior vena cava orifice. This is the right border, and just inside the right border I have just penetrated my index finger. So this is the right border starting from the orifice of the superior vena cava to the orifice of the inferior vena cava, and from the inferior vena cava orifice to the apex, this is actually the inferior border. There is another border called left border that actually starts from the left auricle to the apex of the heart. This is the border, and this border is called left border. Remember, whenever we are to trace the borders, we have to indicate that border with a single finger, and whenever we actually are to trace that surface, we have to keep the four fingers slightly attached with one another. Okay, so this is the left border, starts from the left auricle and ends with the apex of the heart, and this left border is related to the left surface. Okay, now coming to the surfaces of the heart, there are three surfaces: left surface, sternocostal surface, and diaphragmatic surface. This is actually left surface. Okay, now this surface that you can actually see, this is the this is the sternocostal surface. Okay, and left surface is actually related to the left border. This is the sternocostal surface and this is the diaphragmatic surface. Now what are the formation of these surfaces? Now two-thirds. The two-thirds of the sternocostal surface will be formed by ventricle, right ventricle. One-third of the sternocostal surface will be formed by ventricle, left ventricle. Two-thirds of the diaphragmatic surface will be formed by ventricle, this time left ventricle, and one-third of the diaphragmatic surface will be formed by ventricle, that is right ventricle. And now this is the base. Two-thirds of the base will be formed by atrium, left atrium, and one-third of the base will be formed by atrium, right atrium. Okay. And now this is the left surface. How will you be able to trace the left surface? Left surface is a confined space between the left border and the continuation of the inferior border. I'm again going to say, how will you be able to trace the left surface? Left surface is a restricted or confined space between the left border and the continuation of the inferior border. Okay, so up to now this was all about the anatomical points of the heart. Now I'm coming to the grooves. Basically there are three grooves of the heart. One is anterior interventricular groove or interventricular groove. Another one is atrio-ventricular groove, or also called as coronary sulcus. Another one is inter-atrial groove. Basically inter-atrial groove cannot be seen from the bird's eye view. So I'm just going to talk about the interventricular groove and coronary sulcus, or also called as atrio-ventricular groove. So basically this groove, this depression like area, this groove is the anterior interventricular groove. So the interventricular groove has got two parts. One is anterior interventricular groove, the other one is posterior interventricular groove. This is the posterior interventricular groove. I hope it's being visible on camera. This is the posterior interventricular groove, and this is the anterior interventricular groove. And this is the anterior coronary sulcus. This is the anterior coronary sulcus. This depression, you can see anterior coronary sulcus, and this is the posterior coronary sulcus. So, and this coronary sulcus are going to separate the atrium from the ventricle, and this interventricular groove is going to separate the both ventricles from each other. And atrio-ventricular groove is going to separate atrium from ventricle. Okay. Now there is another thing that I've missed, that is the separation of the borders. This left border is going to separate the left surface from the sternocostal surface. Similarly, this inferior border is going to separate the sternocostal surface from the diaphragmatic surface. And there is another border called right border, what I have already shown you. Let me show you once again. This is the right border. So this right border is going to separate the sternocostal surface from the base of the heart. Okay. Now I'm coming to the contents of these grooves. Okay, and this is the posterior atrio-ventricular groove, and this is the anterior atrio-ventricular groove. So what are going to be the contents of atrio-ventricular grooves? Okay, on the right side, it's going to lodge the right coronary artery. On the left side of the left coronary sulcus, it is going to lodge left coronary artery. And posteriorly, there is going to be the presence of coronary sinus in the posterior coronary sulcus. Okay, and the interventricular branch of the right coronary artery will be present in the posterior interventricular groove, and the interventricular branch of the right coronary interventricular branch of the left coronary artery will be present in the anterior interventricular groove. So this was all about the anatomical points of the heart. Hope you have liked this video. If you have liked this, then please do not forget to be subscribed to our channel, and also share this channel with your friends.